Hi, good morning. Welcome to 9 a.m. Yoga Begin. My name is Danielle, and we're going to start in an easy seated position. So that means whatever's comfortable for you. You can be seated on a block or a blanket if that's easier on your hips, or you can have your legs cross-legged or out in front of you, whatever works for you. Once you find your easy seated position, just take a moment to settle in. Maybe take a few breaths here. And we'll start by easing some of the tension in the neck. So we'll take a few easy neck rolls, starting by dropping your chin to your chest, and then slowly bringing your gaze over to your right shoulder, bringing the chin back to your chest and over to the other side. Just bring some slow, gentle movements. Bring your chin to your chest one more time. Let your head float back up. And reach your fingertips out towards your out to your sides and down towards your mat. Your fingertips may or may not touch. But sit up nice and tall, however you're sitting, almost like you've got an invisible string connected to the crown of your head that's drawing you up, that's lengthening your spine. And then drop your right ear to your right shoulder. At the same time that your ear is coming towards your shoulder is dropping away from the ear, creating space in the other side of your neck and shoulder. And return your head to center. Drop your left ear to your left shoulder. Reach your fingertips down towards the mat to create that space. And then come back to center. You can take a few shoulder rolls if that feels good. Rolling them back, rolling them forward. And then shrug your shoulders up to your ears really tight. And then release. One more time. Shrug them up, scrunch them really tight. And then let it all go. And we're going to make our way into child's pose. So if you are sitting cross-legged, one of my favorite ways is just to rock forward onto my knees. But if you are seated somehow differently, you can roll onto your side hip and swing your legs behind you. And as you come into child's pose, your knees come wide, like to the edges of your mat. Big toes come to touch. And send your hips back to your heels and slide your hands forward. If it feels good for you, you can rest your forehead on the mat, or you can also rest it on a rolled up towel or a block or something that you've got handy. If you want to take a little bit of tension and weight out of your neck. And as you're in child's pose, this is a really good place to check in with your breath. You may be able to even feel your belly moving against your legs in this pose. And you don't need to change anything about your breath, but sometimes just bringing your awareness to it can help um, ease some tension. For me, I hold a lot of tension right here, right in my breathing muscles. And so when I am stressed and tense, my breath doesn't flow as easily or as evenly. So sometimes just checking in with my breath can tell me a lot about what's going on with my body. Still in child's pose, we're going to take a gentle little side stretch here. So with your arms extended, if you are using a prop for your forehead, you can move that aside. And then we're going to walk our hands over to the right side. And it doesn't have to be very far, just far enough for you to get a sensation in the left side body. Maybe you feel it in the arms, maybe you feel it in the ribs or even down to the hips. And walk your hands back to center and over to the left side this time. Again, finding that threshold where you get a sensation of stretching, but not pain. And walk your hands back to center one more time. Take one good stretch. Find the fullest expression of your child's pose here. Melting your heart down towards the ground. And then shift your weight back. As you rise up, we're going to come to tabletop position. So for tabletop, your shoulders are stacked right over your wrists, knees hip width apart, your hips are over your knees, and you can keep your toes tucked for some stability, or you can release the tops of your feet to the mat, whichever feels better for you. You can start by taking some organic movement, whatever feels good here. It might feel good to hinge back and forth a little bit or snake side to side. We're still waking up the spine. we'll take a few cat-cows here as well. So usually this is a point in the practice that you can start to connect your breath with your movement. And in most yoga classes, you'll hear instructors cue inhale to this pose, exhale to that pose. So the breath connection can be important, but don't get too hung up on it. You know, there's really no wrong way to do it as long as you actually keep breathing. So you can do these inhales and exhales with the poses, or you can do your own thing. But on your next inhale, drop your belly, lift your tailbone, lift your gaze so that you're creating an arch in your spine. Draw your shoulders back and together so that you're creating an opening in the front of your chest. And then as you exhale, round your spine to cat. And release your head and your neck. And inhale to cow once again. Pulling the heart through the shoulders. Exhale. And take one more cow. And one more cat. And once again, move out anything that needs to be moved. And we're going to take our first downward facing dog of the day. So some people need a little bit more space between their hands and their feet. So you can move your hands about one handprint forward on the mat. Spread your fingers wide and press each finger into the mat so that you have a firm foundation. Tuck your toes, lift your knees, lift your hips, and pedal out your down dog. So straighten one leg and then the other. Waking up the hamstrings a little bit. And then once you're warmed up a little bit, you can bend your knees if you need to. Very few people can do a proper down dog with their legs straight because you really don't want your shoulders over your wrists. You want to press your heart towards your thighs so that you are creating a diagonal line from your wrists to your shoulders to your hips. Lift the hips up to the ceiling. Your heels can press down towards the mat, but it's okay if they're not touching. And see if you can distribute your weight equally between your hands and your feet so that you're not too heavy over your hands, or you're not too heavy over your feet, that it's split half and half. And breathe. Inhale, gaze forward to the spot on your mat between your hands, and you're going to tiptoe your feet forward till your feet come all the way between your hands into a forward fold. And your feet can be hip width apart. Most people feel pretty stable like that. Or if you prefer, you can have your big toes touching and your heels a smidge apart. But let your arms dangle. Release your neck and your head. Let them feel heavy. You can sway your hands side to side, or you can rest your pinkies in your elbows. This pose is called ragdoll for a reason, because you can let everything loose. And if it feels like an intense hamstring stretch, if it brings back way too many memories of gym class, touch your toes, bend those knees. Make them soft. I have mine bent quite a bit in ragdoll, because for me, it's all about lifting my tailbone and releasing the top half of the body. And if you do have your pinkies and your elbows here, release your hands down to the mat. You might need to bend your knees even further and walk your fingertips over to the right side. So we're doing a side stretch again, but you might feel a little bit different sensation from standing than you did in child's pose. Walk your fingertips back to center and then over the left side. Back to center one more time. We'll come up to a halfway lift. So for halfway lift, your hands can come to your shins or your thighs. Do straighten your legs quite a bit and squeeze your shoulder blades back and together. So you have a flat back. Your gaze is down at the mat so that your neck continues that long line of your spine. So you're making the number 7 with your body. Take another breath here. Inhale and exhale. Release back down to your forward fold. This time, inhale, sweep your arms up overhead for extended mountain. So big move coming all the way to standing. And then bring your palms together and your hands to heart center. Ground down through your feet. Maybe check out where your weight is in your feet, if it's forward in the balls of your feet or back into your heels. Play around with where that weight is and see if you can bring it right to the middle where you feel the most stable. You can lift up your toes. If you really want a yoga challenge, see if you can set one toe down at a time on the mat. That's a work in progress. And then keep a little micro bend in your knees so that you're not locking them. Relax the shoulders. Soften your jaw. And at the same time that you're rooting down into the mat through your feet, also let your head feel light and lifted by that invisible string again. Mountain pose is where you are strong and immovable. Inhale your arms up overhead again for extended mountain. And exhale, forward fold. Your hands can come through heart center. Inhale, halfway lift, making that number 7 again with your body. And exhale, forward fold. Plant your hands on the mat. So bend your knees a lot. Stick those hands on the mat like starfish. And then step one foot back. Doesn't matter which. Step the other foot back. You're coming into a high plank push-up position. You can hinge back and forth, find that sweet spot where your shoulders are over your wrists. You can also do this from your knees. You're still engaging your core. You're still getting the same strength building sensation. So whether you're in a high plank or high plank from your knees, squeeze your elbows into your rib cage as you slowly lower down and lower down all the way belly to the mat. And once you're there, with little or no weight in your hands, inhale, peel your chest up off the mat for a low cobra. And exhale, release. Cheek to mat. Inhale, low cobra again. Release the other cheek to the mat as you come down. And then last time, inhale, peel your chest up, and then bring your forearms to the ground to prop yourself up. So we're coming into a Sphinx pose. And for Sphinx pose, you can have your elbows right up under your shoulders. If you would like a little bit different intensity, if you want to change it up, you can extend your elbows out in front of you. So this will be a little bit less extreme low back arch. Once you find that sweet spot, think about drawing your heart forwards through your hands. So your shoulders are down away from the ears. Your heart is shining forward. And you can release the tops of your feet to the mat, or if you would like to release the low back a little bit more, you can rotate your toes in towards each other. And that rotates the whole leg and thigh, and we'll open up the back of the hips. But only do that if it feels good, because every body is a little bit different. Take one more breath here. Full inhale and exhale. And then you can slide your arms out in front of you, releasing your chest down to the mat. Bring your hands under your shoulders. Tuck your toes. Push yourself up to tabletop. And from tabletop, all the way up into downward facing dog again. You might need to pedal out your down dog again here, especially if your hamstrings are tight like mine. One time usually doesn't cut it. Once you settle into your down dog, lifting your hips high, you're gonna lift your right leg up behind you, kicking it out to the back wall, nice and straight, nice and strong, and then swing it through between your hands. If your foot doesn't quite come between your hands, that's okay. You can pick it up and scoot it forward, just so long as your knee is stacked over your ankle so that you're protecting all those joints. And then from here, set your back knee down. Again, you can keep that back toes tucked, or you can release the foot to the mat. I like to keep them tucked. We're going to come up to a kneeling crescent. So if you want to come up in stages, you can put one hand on your thigh and then the other. And so you can lift your torso up. You can readjust your front foot a little if you need. Now take a minute to focus on your hips. If your left hip is really pulling backwards, focus on bringing it forwards and setting that right hip back into the socket so that your hips really are squared to the front of the mat. And from here, inhale your arms up overhead. On your next breath, we're going to take a twist towards the right side of the room, so towards your front leg. Bring your right arm back, your left arm forward as you open up to the side there. And you might have a little balance going on here. You can gaze to the right wall of the room, or you can gaze forward, or you can gaze down at your front foot, whatever kind of helps you with that balance. So taking a little twist here. And then drop your right hand behind you. Bring your left arm up so that you're really opening up the chest a bit. And then release both hands down to the inside of your front foot. We're moving into a runner's lunge. So toe heel your right foot up to the corner of your mat. Adjust your back knee. If you want to put some padding or something under there, you can. Double up your mat or use a blanket or something. Now, if you want to stay right here, if this is a really good runner's lunge, stay here. If you want to bring your forearms down to the ground, you can, or use a block. One variation that I see a lot of people taking is that they'll drop their right knee out to the side, and you can absolutely do that too to open up the hips some more. If you do that, come to the knife edge of your foot so that your knee and your ankle are still in line, keeping your joints safe. If you're on your forearms, slowly start to bring your hands under your shoulders, move aside any props that you're using, and start to toe heel that foot back to center. Once you've got it center, you can shift your weight back towards your left heel. At the same time, you're straightening your front leg. I like to have some blocks handy here because coming into a half saddle, I don't always like to sit all the way back on my back heel. You certainly can, but I get more out of it hamstring wise if I stay lifted. And flex your right foot so that your toes are pointing up at the ceiling. And if you want to, you can even gently go between the two, straightening your right leg, bending it. Or you can hang out here for a little bit. If you do decide to go into a half saddle, this is what it would look like, sitting all the way back on your left heel. And then come back to a bent right knee. So you're back in your kneeling crescent. Bring your hands down to the mat to frame your front foot. Send your front foot back and you can stretch it out, shake it out. You might want to make some little hip circles. And then come back to a neutral tabletop. If you need to, move your hands one handprint forward on the mat. We're moving back up into a downward facing dog. Tuck your toes, lift your knees, lift your hips. Back into the down dog. And from here, inhale your left leg up this time, straight behind you, nice and strong. And then exhale, lunge it through between your hands. If it doesn't reach, scoot it forward. Set down your back knee. Take your time to rise up into your kneeling crescent. Once you adjust your stance, take the same time you did before to square your hips to the front of the mat. If that right hip wants to pull open, draw it forward, set the left leg into that hip socket. And once you feel stable here, inhale your arms up overhead. We're going to take a twist to the other side. So you're going to twist towards your front leg, your left leg. Bring your right arm back, your left arm forward. Taking that real gentle twist. And then drop your left arm down behind you, right arm comes up. To take a little back bend. And then release both hands down to the inside of the front foot. Set up for runner's lunge on this side. So toe heel the left foot up to the corner. Adjust your back knee. And then decide how far down you want to go on this side, because our two sides are often not the same, and that's okay. So this may be the side that you want to stay up here on your hands. You might want to come down to your forearms. You've got the same option to drop that knee out to the side, coming to the knife edge of your foot. So find your runner's lunge on this side. Start to bring your hands under your shoulders again. Set aside any props. As you shift your weight back, scoot that front foot back between your hands. And then if you want to take that hamstring stretch, shift your weight back towards your right heel, flexing your left foot, pointing the toes to the ceiling. You can stay lifted, or you can sit back on that heel for half saddle. Option to shift between the two, straightening and bending. Some people like long holds and poses. Some people like the fluid movement back and forth. So find what works for you. Then come back to your kneeling crescent. Place both hands on the mat. Send your front foot back. Stretch it, shake it, hip circles. And come back to your tabletop. From the tabletop, walk your hands back towards your knees until you can come up to standing on your knees. We'll do a pose called gate pose. So for gate pose, shift your weight into your left knee so that you can slide your right leg out to the side. So you might need to adjust your spacing on your mat a little bit. And if you do have like a chair or a piece of furniture or something that you want out to the side for balance, you can use that. Once you have your right leg straight out to the side, you can choose to stay here, especially if you're already feeling sensation in that inner thigh. Or you can bring your hands up overhead and then take a side stretch towards that right leg. If you do take the side stretch, make sure that you're lengthening both side bodies. And what you don't want to do is stretch this side so far and then collapse your right side so that you don't have breathing room in the rib cage. So lengthen and extend. Pull your left shoulder back so that you're opening the front of the chest. Return back to center. Release your hands down and switch legs. So bring your right leg into kneeling. Adjust as you need. And then shift weight into the right knee so that you can slide that left leg out to the side. Option to stay here, or option to reach your hands overhead and then over to the left side. Again, find that place where you're lengthening the spine and creating space. Your right shoulder is set back so that you're not rounding over. Come back up to center. Release the arms. Release the legs. And we're going to come back to seated, and you can do that however you want to. You can cross your ankles, sit back, and bring your legs through, or any other way that works. Once we're in seated, extend your left leg out straight and bring your right foot to the inside of your thigh. Let the knee just fall out to the side. If this is intense on your inner thigh or your hip crease, you can prop up that knee. And from here, we're in a half staff. Sit up nice and tall. So get your sit bones firmly on the ground. Lift up through the crown of your head. Lengthen the spine. You can choose to stay right here, or you can bring your arms overhead and lead with your heart, hinge from your hips to fold forward over your front leg. When you can't go any farther with a flat back, release your hands. And then if it feels okay on your back, you have the option to round the spine and release the head and neck. If you can't tell already, I love, love, love yoga blocks, but other things work great too. And if you do have a lot of neck tension, just having something to take the weight of your head in these poses can help a lot of that tension. So feel free to build yourself a block tower, or if you've got blankets or towels or pillows, whatever you have can work. Start to come back up to seated. So if you have any blocks or props you're using, set them aside. If you're folded forward, use your fingertips. Walk your fingertips back towards your torso to help yourself come back to sitting. Use your hand to bring your right knee upright, and then your foot is just going to switch sides. Your right foot is going to come to the outside of your left leg. And just give your knee a good hug. If you want to stay here, you can stay here. Bus stop number 2 would be to bring your left heel in towards your body. So you're coming into a pretzel. And bus stop number 3 would be to take a little mini twist. So from here, you would start to bring your gaze over your right shoulder And you could even bring your right hand behind you to help yourself sit up nice and tall and lengthen the spine as you twist. But don't force the twist. Just let your breath drop you into it. As you inhale, think about sitting up tall and lengthening the spine. As you exhale, you might relax into a little bit more of a twist. If you have taken a twist, come back to center. Extend your left leg out in front of you again. And then release the right leg out in front as well. You can shake out the legs a little bit, windshield wiper them side to side. We'll take the other side. So this time your right leg stays extended. Left foot comes to the inside of your right thigh. Again, you can prop that knee if gravity is creating too much sensation. Bring your right toes pointed up towards the ceiling, and you can stay right here, or you can forward fold by reaching your hands overhead, leading with your heart, keeping your back flat, and then releasing your hands. And finally, the head and neck, if that feels okay for you. You might need a little bit more time on this side or a little bit less, because again, our sides are not even. They're not always symmetrical. So take a little bit of extra time here if you need. If you're ready to come back up to seated, walk your fingertips back, lift your torso. Use your hands to pull that left knee up. Bring the left foot to the outside of the right leg and find your bus stop. So this might be all you need. And listen to your body. We're told a lot of times that if there's no pain, there's no gain. And that's not the case. That is the road to injury. So find your threshold where you do feel some sensation, you do feel a stretch. My ballet teacher was fond of calling it therapeutic discomfort, but not pain. So this is bus stop number 1. Stop number 2, you want to bring that heel into your bum. You can do that. And stop number 3 would be if you want to bring your gaze over your left shoulder, Moving towards a little baby twist. Your left hand can come behind you to help you sit up tall. Inhale to lengthen your spine. Exhale to relax into the twist if that's what your body wants. Come back to center. Straighten your right leg. Uncross your left. Extend your left leg. Shake them both out. Take whatever other movements feel good. And we're going to work our way onto our backs. So you can bend your knees, grab the back of your thighs, and roll back. Or you can roll over onto one hip, extend the legs to the side, and then roll over, lowering yourself down. Once you find your way onto your back, bring your right knee into your chest, followed by your left knee, so that you can give both legs a good hug. And if it feels good, you can rock side to side a little bit. You could even make circles on the ceiling with your knees. That will really massage the low back and the sacrum. And take whatever other movement would feel good before your final Shavasana, your resting pose. If you have a happy baby in your practice, you can always take that happy baby. And once you settle into your Shavasana, that can be legs extended fully down on the mat with your feet falling open, your arms resting down by your sides. Or it might be that you want your knees bent with your feet on the mat and your knees knocked together. I recommend this if you do have low back pain. That way there's not so much of an arch down there. You can rest your back on the mat a little better. You can rest a hand on your belly or a hand on your heart. When you find your resting pose, let your arms and legs start to feel heavy. They're still supported by the earth underneath you, but you don't have to use the energy to hold them up anymore. If you notice any areas of pain or tension in your body that are calling to you, take a breath in and imagine that breath traveling through your body to that area. bringing fresh oxygenated blood in to bring rejuvenation. And as you exhale, that pain or that tension dissipates. And enjoy this time on your mat to let your yoga practice sink in and to thank yourself for the hard work that your body does for you. This rest is an important part of the yoga practice. So it's okay to take this time. And if you set aside an hour to do this practice, then there are about 3 minutes remaining. I would encourage you to stay longer in Shavasana if you can, if you have the time and space. Whenever you're ready to return awareness and feeling to your body, you can start to wiggle your toes and your fingers, and maybe roll your wrists and your ankles in little circles. But moving very slowly and in your own time, roll over onto your favorite side and draw your knees up into your chest a little bit. Maybe use your arm as a pillow. And use your hands to press yourself back up to seated, moving slow, moving gently. And I want to thank you so much for doing yoga with me, for choosing to come onto your yoga mat today, because some days that choice is harder than others. And I hope you have an awesome rest of your day. Namaste.